Big Ten football is better than SEC football, Connor?
Iowa or Northwestern would be at least a 20-point dog against any SEC right now. End of argument. Thank you, Jack. That's not my secret weapon, but
Northwestern wouldn't be. Iowa would be 100%.
Look, we're obviously talking about right now, right? We're not talking about historically because I don't want to bring 1700s Big Ten football out and then try to compete against that.
Kenny, go get him!
It would be the late 1800s, first of all.
I'm just
historically, yes.
Not because I can't
didn't exist when Big Ten.
Not because I can't kick Connor's ass in an argument, but just because I want the real college football nerds to talk, I'm going to remove myself for this segment so that the real college football people can talk.
Oh my God!
In the background. Wow. And I know nothing about college football. I couldn't care less. I just like instigating. So y'all have fun. I don't know. I think Bruce went to the bathroom.
Bruce can come back, but my secret weapon just showed up, so I'm going to bring him in when you leave.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead.
Nate Nessie.
Oh, Nate.
Real quick. Hi, Nate. I love you.
Oh my gosh, I need Gator in my life. Just like the Florida Gators and SEC. Nate, we are talking about the Big Ten versus the SEC. What you got?
SEC.
Is it like that cut and dry? Is there like anything behind it? Or is it just like everybody should know this? It should be common knowledge, right?
As of lately, the SEC is the SEC right now. But in the 90s, nobody can fuck with the Big Ten. Nobody. Like the 90s and the early part of 2000, nobody can fuck with the Big Ten. Nobody.
Yeah, you had like Wisconsin even being good.
Even currently, though, like the Big Ten is in the process.
Wait, Kenny, would that be technically okay? All the 90s, throughout the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what's up,
Nate? The first beginning. What's up, Brucey? First beginning of the 2000s.
Yeah, I would say this was my argument before: is that college football is very cyclical, right? So in the 90s, 2000s, you had Big Ten, then the ACC kind of took over.
Yeah.
Then after the ACC, you kind of had the Big 12 take over, and now you're starting to see not starting to, but now you've had the resurgence of the SEC. But my point is that every time you talk about a conference in college football, the Big Ten is always right there in that conversation. You have Ohio State, who made.
Just name the two teams. Just say the two teams. Just say the two teams.
Ohio State and that team up north. Now you've added USC, UCLA, who
Oregon
should be better. Oregon for sure. You have Washington, who was in the playoff last year, now part of the Big Ten.
Big Ten.
So the Big Ten is not only constantly part of that conversation. They're the one conference that continues to grow and expand and demonstrate that they are willing to take the risks in order to be the best conference.
Well, and we can also say this: the Big Ten is always, since the football playoffs started, the Big Ten, just like the SEC, they're the two conferences that are always represented in the football playoff.
Yeah, I mean,
like
right now
they're always represented in the football playoff.
And right now you have a conversation where it might just be the Big Ten and the SEC forming their own super league for the future of the college playoff.
It's gonna be such a joke. Honestly, I don't want that. I ain't gonna lie. I don't want that.
It ruins the aura of college football, but in the grand scheme, it does prove that the Big Ten is the legitimate football conference.
Jack, as long as Caleb Williams isn't playing, you're right. They'll never be anywhere.
I mean, what do we define legitimate, though? Do we define legitimate as losing? Because the last time I checked, the Big Ten hasn't won much of anything. But I mean, we could say Michigan won the national championship. We can say that. But there's no consistency in the Big Ten, right? It's like when you bake a cake but don't leave the cake in the oven long enough. It's like super squishy on the inside, but the outside looks fine. But when you actually bite into the cake, all the batter just falls out because there's no consistency. There's no depth in the Big Ten. When you look at the SEC, it's straight depth.
The consistency is over the past 30 years, if not more, the consistency is that the Big Ten is always a part of that conversation. And then when you talk about the NFL draft, the Big Ten is always a part of that conversation.
Are we talking about the Big Ten, though, or are we just talking about Michigan and Ohio State? Because what I'm hearing is like when we talk about like the Big Ten's in the conversation, it's really just Michigan and Ohio State. We never really talk about the rest of it.
I don't know, Michigan's
Connor.
Penn State, dude.
Connor, stop talking.
Hey,
Because you're forgetting some teams that's in the Big Ten.
I'm not forgetting
you are.
because they're not coming up.
he's
Wait, I'm sorry.
Penn State.
Penn State. I'm sorry. They lost 38-25 versus the fifth best SEC team this past season. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I forgot Penn State. Or was I forgetting about Wisconsin, who just lost to LSU without their starting quarterback Jaden Daniels in their bowl game? Was I forgetting about those Big Ten teams, Nate? Are those the Big Ten teams I was forgetting about?
So again, but you need to define the parameters of the conversation. Are we talking about overall over the past 30 years? Are we talking about within the past season? Because there's a significant difference. And even you could argue that you want to talk about recruiting, you want to talk about how the leagues have expanded. then you get into how the Big Ten is overwhelmingly better.
I can't say, but again, in the late 90s, or excuse me, the 90s,
Northwestern, baby, Darnell Autry, Dwayne Bates, let's go.
The early 2000s, I'm talking about. Big Ten was loaded. I mean, Michigan, Ohio State, Purdue, Illinois. Because I mean, again, we forget Rashad Mendenhall went to Penn State. Yeah, I know. Iowa's always
had good defense.
And not to Michigan State. I mean, Michigan State just had a rough year, but they've always been competitive. Like so.
They won't be. They just fired their head coach.
It's different. It's different times in different areas because there was a time when the Pac-10, when it was a Pac-10, Pac-10 was doing anything. Again, college football on the landscape. Now the SEC is like, it's the resurgence of the SEC. Guys are out there competing, but one thing I can't, I'm SEC is running stuff right now. But we cannot overlook the Big Ten, bro. Like, the Big Ten has so many Heisman Trophy winners. I'm talking about the Troy Smiths, the Eddie Georges. I mean, the Charles Woodson. Like, you've had some. Oh wow.
Flip it.
And again, you have the SEC, and you can talk about the top 5 of the SEC. Put the top 5 of the SEC against the top 5 of the Big Ten. There's going to be a lot of competitive games. Maybe not every single matchup will be competitive, but you'll have that. But if you go to the bottom of the SEC, it's just like talking about Northwestern and Minnesota. There's the same level of competition. There's no way Kentucky historically is better than Purdue in college football.
Agreed. That's well said. That's
not historically, but if you put Kentucky and Purdue right now, Kentucky would whoop Purdue. Like it would not even be close.
Because Kentucky's recruiting much better because they're taking Ohio athletes now. They've decided to jump the border into Ohio, and they're taking Ohio State's leftovers.
What about all right? We'll do Kentucky versus Northwestern.
Probably still Kentucky.
I mean, I still think Kentucky will win, but I don't think it's gonna be a blowout. I don't think it's gonna be like plus 20 that Jack put up there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just.
Sorry. That's gonna.
It's funny. It's really funny you say that because you want to know which team Mississippi State beat in their bowl game before Mike Leach passed away. You want to know what team that was? It was Indiana because Indiana wasn't good enough to make a bowl game. You know what it was? It was Illinois. So you want to talk about Indiana can't beat Mississippi or can beat Mississippi State? No. I know I go to Mississippi State. I get that. And they're the bottom feeders of the SEC right now. But if Mississippi State can beat Arizona. I'm sorry, Nick. I'm sorry. I have to use that example. They can beat the majority of Big Ten teams because Arizona is better than the majority of Big Ten. I just want to put that out there. But State has not played a Big Ten team besides Illinois. So, I mean.
I'm be honest with you. And I love my alma mater, but we're not better than the majority of the Big Ten teams.
This year, y'all are. Arizona is a playoff contending team this year.
Hold on. Wait. I don't smoke weed, but we're not going to do that shit. That's what we're not going to do.
You don't want to say that. Have you not watched Arizona, Nate?
I'm a realist. I have to be honest.
And so am I. And Arizona was that good.
Arizona, again, we lost a couple of close games to some really good opponents. We have to, for us to be considered elite, we have to beat the UWs. Bruce, can you come here?
Oh, I said hi. She's like, no.
Can you come here? Bruce says hi. No, because he can see you. Like he's right. Like Bruce says hi.
Hi. Connor, you're getting your butt whooped right now.
Until
I'm getting my butt whooped. Okay, whatever.
Until Arizona can consistently beat a team, you can't say that they're a playoff bound or a playoff, team contender until you beat teams that are actually competing for playoff contention. I can't.
Yeah, like Missouri beating Ohio State and Ole Miss beating Penn State. Like those are people that are contending for the playoffs. And guess who beat them? The 5th and 4th ranked SEC teams beat the number 2.
And then you're right, MJ. And I'm gonna bust this bad boy out and be like,
Ohio State with a backup quarterback and their star receiver sitting on the sidelines, right? And that backup quarterback didn't get past the first half. And Ohio State was clearly in somewhat of a disarray after the loss against that team up north. So I think 9 times out of 10, Ohio State beats the shit out of Missouri, and it's not even close.
I think this is Florida State, Cope. This is exactly what Florida State fans were saying when they had to play Georgia, and then Georgia blew their ass cheeks out by the biggest playoff deficit in history.
There was no one playing. Florida State didn't have anyone playing. They took
exactly,
out all
Jed.
out. They had all their freshmen playing. Like,
it's Cope. It's Cope. If you are a top team, you should have depth. Every top team has depth. That's why we've seen the Georgia Bulldogs in the national championship conversation the past 4, 5, 6 years because they have that depth.
When you have
a team that has
has
10, 12 people that get drafted, though.
Exactly, because they have the depth. They get drafted, but they have the depth to back it up.
Ohio State has depth.
I'm not saying Ohio State doesn't have depth, but they definitely didn't against Missouri, if that's what you're arguing.
No, you just said Florida State. Florida State.
I didn't say Florida State because it was the same copium that Florida State uses against Georgia when they don't have depth. But Florida State's this big team. Ohio State's this big team, but yet they didn't have depth to beat Missouri. They didn't have depth to go against Missouri.
Florida State was a big team back in the early 2000s.
And they still are. They went undefeated.
No, they're not.
They went undefeated.
They're rebuilding right now, for sure. They are a rebuilding team.
If a Power 5 school goes undefeated, they should be in the conversation.
All right, so how about this?
Okay.
So if Ohio State went undefeated, they were in the playoffs.
You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
What about you? Okay, so all right, so let's backtrack. Like, all right, so we're all right. So historically, University of Miami, that team was a badass team back in the 90s. Am I wrong?
Yeah, 80s, 90s.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Elite.
Elite, exactly. I mean, even like in the 2000s, you got Greg Olson going there. You had Ed Reed going there. You had Ray Lewis. I don't even think that was.
Wait, Bruce. Right? Hold on, Bruce. What's up? Let me go ahead and say it. That U team had the great Sean Taylor, Ed Reed, Mike Rumpf. You had Philip Dorsett. You had again Antrell Rowe, Vince Wilfork, Jonathan Ogden. You had Willis McGahee. You had
Frank Gore.
That wasn't the same. Was it the same team?
Frank Gore.
Was
yes,
it was
a span. It was a span.
The span. Was that the 4-year span? Was that the 4 years?
They honestly probably could have.
Jonathan Bilmer.
They were sick.
Okay, so what I'm saying so you're comparing like, okay, so you should be building blah 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 this that and the other. Teams are going to have that like lag. All right. So Florida State right now, like they had a great season. You said that, Connor, and they sat. A lot of the seniors sat and juniors sat because they were going to be draft eligible. I don't think the teams back in the early 2000s and 90s would have done the same thing. It wasn't as popular back then. But I'm gonna tell you right now, that's a terrible comparison. I'm gonna tell you that Florida State
How is it a terrible comparison?
It's not a good comparison.
When the people like Alabama and Georgia, who have won the majority of the national championships,
what did Alabama do this year? No, great.
Hold up.
What did Alabama do this year?
They went to the Rose Bowl and lost in overtime.
To who?
To Michigan.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're not talking about one team. The Big Ten is not Michigan and Ohio State, which y'all are painting it out to be. We're talking about a whole conference. This is a whole conference
isn't Alabama and Georgia. The SEC.
No, it's not. But I've also brought up Ole Miss and Missouri. I mean, I'm not just bringing up Alabama and Georgia, but for this specific topic.
I didn't hear you say Ole Miss. No, you're right.
I brought up these other teams for consistency and depth, which the Big Ten has lacked of. Which the Big Ten has lacked. They just don't have the depth of the SEC. And you can't argue with that. The SEC had the most teams in the top 25 than any conference in the entire country this past year.
What about Penn State?
Penn State lost 38-25 to the fifth best SEC team. I don't want to talk about Penn State.
Do rankings matter that much when there's some bias to that?
No, rankings don't matter when you get beat 3 possessions by the fifth best SEC teams. Yeah, the rankings don't matter.
Washington and Oregon were two of the best teams in the country last year, and that don't matter anymore either.
Washington and Oregon are not a part of the Big Ten until this year. They have not. I'm not taking.
Yeah, but we're talking about right now.
Hold up.
I'm talking about right now, and they're in the Big Ten.
Do you want to use Oregon and Washington? Because I sure can use Texas and Oklahoma. Do you want to go that route, MJ? Do you want to go that route, MJ?
Go ahead.
Do you want to go that route? Do you want to talk about Heisman's? Do you want to talk about great football? Because if you want me to bring Texas and Oklahoma, you have made a big mistake in your life, MJ. If you want me to bring up Texas and Oklahoma.
When was the last time they won anything?
Like a national championship?
When was the last time they won anything?
A national championship does not determine how good a football team is. Yes, it's been since 2005. Yes.
Wait, what?
Yes.
Why do you play?
A national championship doesn't.
It doesn't determine everything. We're talking about a conference. We're not talking about one team. If I can talk about the significance of college football, that includes winning, that includes Heisman winning, that includes votes.
That includes recruiting and drafting.
It includes a lot of stuff, not just the national championship.
Connor, I'm sorry. You know you're my brother from another mother. I love you. I'm gonna tell you why we go to college.
Hey, we're supposed to be on the same team. What are we doing here?
I was with you all the way up until you said the national championship does not, determine.
It doesn't determine everything.
Whoa, because we played this game for 2 things.
We do.
What's still those 2 things? When you go to college and you compete and you're playing for 2 things. What's those 2 things?
Winning.
No, 2 things. What you playing for?
Winning, exactly.
No. National. You playing for championships. There's one more thing you plan for.
I don't know, your team?
No, unlimited one-night stands.
Yes, sir.
I knew Bruce was gonna say something. I knew Bruce was gonna say something.
Maybe not anymore. Back in the day, yeah.
So Washington went further last year than the majority of SEC teams. So if we're talking about winning and advancing.
Okay, well, so did Texas and Alabama. If you want to pull that card, so did Texas and Alabama. They all made the playoffs, although they didn't make the national championship, but they all made the playoffs. You want to bring Texas and Oklahoma into the conversation, then they definitely had the most teams ranked in the top 25 last season. But I decided not to use it because it'd be too much ammo for the SEC.
But who wins?
Who wins what?
Who wins in the next 10 years?
If I had to guess, well, right now, I can't say because NIL has so much influence on the game of football now.
All of a sudden
it might not even be SEC and Big Ten we're talking about in the next couple of years. We could see a resurgence of a group
Carolina.
We could see a resurgence of group of 5 teams. I don't know. It's different. I would like to personally say that the SEC would be the best conference going into the years to come. But I have no idea, and I cannot put my foot down and say that because of how much NIL will influence the game of football moving forward. People will transfer like crazy.
Because the Big Ten has the more future possible for teams to be more successful. So the Big Ten, if we're looking future, it's going to be the Big Ten.
And it could be, but the best transfer portal team
take the SEC
is
dick
Ohio
out
State.
of your mouth.
The team that has had the best transfer portal
out of the SEC. Ohio State stole the best running back out of the SEC.
But Ole Miss has had the best transfer portal. Lane Kiffin has
Ole Miss ain't done nothing.
They have the best transfer portal in all of the country, and I hate to say that because of the hat I'm wearing.
What have they done?
I do not like to give Ole Miss
They
props.
haven't done anything.
They have gotten some of the highest recruits in the country in the transfer portal.
When was the last time they won
past season?
When was the last time they won something?
But they did lose Quinshon Judkins, but they have depth. That's what a good team does. They have depth. They have running back depth. They have Bentley at depth. They have Ellsworth at depth.
And I'm saying coach shit.
Connor,
so it doesn't matter.
Connor, baby
Nate,
girl.
look at your text.
Connor, baby girl. You have one argument, and it's that.
No, I don't. I have a lot of arguments.
No, you have one.
But y'all just like to put cotton in your ears and don't listen, just like the Cotton Bowl when Ohio State lost.
You have one.
What are you even talking about?
Your one argument.
I'm going to keep bringing that up.
Your one argument is that picture you kept sending in the group chat. Anything else you say is irrelevant and respectfully makes sense.
I sent 3 pictures in the group chat, and that all of a sudden does one argument.
All of a sudden.
Because you wanted to say national championship, so I sent a picture of a screenshot of who has won the most of the last 20 national championships, and 15 of them were SEC teams.
Take a deep breath and listen, because that's exactly what I just said, my guy.
Yeah, but I sent more than that picture. Y'all have. I mean, y'all can sit here and say,
I'm trying to help you.
Y'all can sit here and say what you want.
Trying to help
Connor, MJ is on your side right there.
Pop the picture up on the screen then. People don't know what we're talking about.
Get the SEC out your cheeks and open your ears. I'm trying to help you.
No, get this SEC out of your mouth, bro.
He's got Bama in one and Georgia in the other. Good. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I also could bring up a bunch of other teams, but yeah, Alabama and Georgia.
Okay.
Not good, and Kenny, not good.
Okay.
How's
Arkansas doing?
Probably better than State, but they just lost KJ Jefferson.
Look at Nate. How you doing, Nate?
But everybody has their low teams. There's just more of them in the Big Ten.
Ooh.
That's all I gotta say. Everybody has bad teams in their conference. The SEC just has the fewest of them.